Hello, welcome to Meet the Author, sponsored by the Author Event Network in partnership with the Bremerton Public Access Television Station. I'm your host, Guy Morris. Author Event Network is a nonprofit association of local authors who sign books at local festivals, fairs, and events. And our guest today is Deborah Menenberg. Hello, Deborah. How are you?
I'm fine, thank you.
I'm so glad to have you here. Now, you're a new member of the group.
I am, and I'm thrilled to be here.
This is going to be your first summer out with us. We're going to be at a lot of events this year, so you're going to be meeting a lot of new readers.
Can't wait.
And this is kind of your warm-up to be able to have to talk about your book.
Yes.
So that you'll be doing that all summer, believe me. Well, let's start with, tell us about what inspired you to become an author, because I always find that to be a really great place to start because all of us come from someplace different.
Different places. This is going to sound weird, but what inspired me was really stress and anxiety. I taught special ed for 36 years, and sometimes when things got too crazy, I would write about it. And I would exaggerate it, and I'd look at the funny side of things and make it happier and more amusing. And I would send those emails out to my friends and family, and they said, "You need to write about this." And I did.
Excellent, excellent. So these kids were your inspiration. They were your muse.
That's right. Originally, yes.
Now, was it because of the unexpected nature of the things they would do? Is it just because had to...
That's right. The things that they would say and things that would happen would be just amusing. And if you look at the funny side of things, all of a sudden it's not so scary. And all of a sudden it doesn't make it so difficult. It makes it exciting and inspirational.
I think that's what Stephen Colbert helps me do with the world news. That's a good skill to have if you can help us look at things with a humorous perspective. Well, what kind of genres then do you write? Do you write in a particular genre?
My first book that was published is called Uniquely Stella, and it is historical fiction. Okay. It takes place after the Second World War, so the middle of 1940s and then mostly into 1950s. And so that's historical fiction inspired by a true story. Okay. And
well, tell us about the true story.
The true story really, my sister, Donna Dickinson, had Down syndrome. And she was in poor health. And when I was with her in her final days, I said I wanted to tell her story because it had never been told. No one knew it. And I asked my mother, could I tell your story? Because obviously my mother was part of my sister. And she said, as long as you make it hopeful. So I said, all right, I will. And I wrote their story. Now, I fictionalized it. It's a work of fiction. But it has an element of truth in it. And a lot of people say, ooh, what is real and what isn't here? Yeah. And so I told their story. And it takes place in the 50s at a time when millions of children were denied an education. And they were hidden away. They were institutionalized. And some were even allowed to die. And I wanted people to know this, that these children didn't have an education and were refused one. And it wasn't until 1975, with the Education of All Handicapped Children Act was signed, that required all children must receive an education. And I tell the story of one woman, of how she helped to change that and to make this law happen. And it is one person's story, but I meshed together what had to happen in society in order to make this change occur for all children to receive an education.
You know, that's fascinating. I wasn't aware that handicapped children could be denied an education before that.
And it's in our lifetime.
Yeah.
Before 1975, my sister is a perfect example of a child who never received an education. My mother couldn't find services for her, none. All schools denied her an education, all schools. And even special schools at the time. So I wanted that story to be known, and what had to happen in society to change it. And that's the theme of all my books, is empathy. Empathy is what made the change, and how they brought it about. And in this book, it talks about on the coattails of the Equal Rights Amendment.
Now, do you I'm a big fan. I write thrillers, but famous for blending factual technologies, events, situations, organizations, things within the book, because I believe it gives it more authenticity and plausibility, and it does make you start questioning, well, what's real and what's not. How much do you bake in sort of the real events that were happening in the nation with your fictional characters?
I did a lot of research, a lot of research.
That's what I was getting at.
And it took 2 years to write the book. It starts in Chicago. I took a train trip to Chicago, which is the main character in my book. She takes a train trip back in the 40s to the West Coast. So I took a train trip. I went to the Chicago History Museum. I got to go into their research area. I had to wear white gloves and got into all the stuff. And I made sure that the historical pieces were absolutely accurate, including the terminology that was used at the time, which is terminology we don't use today. But I made sure that happened. What is fictional is many of the characters,
Right.
What they say to each other, how I meshed characters together and time sequences together. I fictionalized definitely Stella's relatives, except for the character of Rosie. Very few people know this, but the character of Rosie in Uniquely Stella is me. And that is probably the most authentic character in the book.
Okay, okay. Now, what role does Rosie play relative to Stella in this book?
She's her daughter.
Okay.
She is a precocious 8-year-old. And Stella had Donna, the Down syndrome child, who was 5 in this series, and then an infant who 1 and 2 years old. And so 3 girls, and her husband has left her.
Okay. So it sounds like you're dealing with themes of empathy, themes of public education, and
right.
dealing with policy, and dealing with culture, and biases, and bigotries, and family dynamics, and all of those. Sounds like
Boy, thank you for saying that for me, because it's always hard to kind of sum up in a couple of sentences what the book's about. But yes, it's all of those. But I also do it with a thread of humor. And you will see there's very humorous times, and people have told me that they'll be laughing, and just like that, there's tears in their eyes. And so it affects you, it grips you, many things. Then I've taken Rosie out of this character and started my new series.
Well, tell us, I was just going to ask you about that. Tell us about, I know you've started a new series, Uniquely Us. Tell us about that series, and how does it kind of take this story, and what are going to be the themes and characters in this story?
Thanks. Uniquely Us follows Rosie. Rosie was a character, a child in Uniquely Stella. Now she's an adult. What happened to her when she was an adult? And this story is again based on a true story.
Okay.
And I taught the resource room at Gordon Elementary School in Kingston. And I was there for a number of years. And this story talks about when we first had to give the WASL. I don't know if you know what that is, the Washington Assessment for Student Learning. It's a standardized test that's back then when it first came out was for 4th, 7th, and 10th graders. But it was to be given to all children, regardless of their needs, their special needs. And I thought that was ludicrous. How can you give this standardized test to these special needs children? So this is a story that takes, in England it's called Take the Mickey, that is a humorous look at giving that test to special needs students.
Okay, okay.
You know? And again, the adult characters are fictional, but everything that is said, those little one-liners, the little circumstances are all true. The things that the kids said are all true.
Now tell me about the target audience for your books, because it sounds like there's a lot that this could be for like young adults to a great extent, but with some adult themes.
Right, I think.
But are you writing primarily for adults, or are you primarily
adults.
for the kids?
It's adults.
Okay.
This is adult humor, a lot of it. I think mostly I'm writing to the educational world.
Okay.
And specifically special education and people who have an interest with those that have special needs or disabilities. And parents, families, you know, with a special needs child, they might go, wow, oh, I get it. Oh, yes, they can probably feel like they're a part of this. In Uniquely Stella, I found the audience that likes it the most are older people, like me, who maybe had a child or a sibling who was handicapped. And those, I've gone to a number of retirement homes and talked, and those are the people that seem to be really interested. They remember those days in the 40s and 50s. And that seems to be a big audience, and people who like historical fiction.
Yeah, it's amazing. You know, we talk about how education has kind of gone downhill, but it's always had kind of bumps along the way.
There's been bumps in the road. I think,
especially when it came to some of the indigenous populations, some of the other handicapped populations. I think some of the fringe groups, I think, found that we've had some bumps. Certainly, it needs to improve. I think, you know, I'm a big believer that if we actually paid teachers more, we'd get higher quality teachers in education. You know, when you can make as much at McDonald's as you can by teaching a room full of children, you lose a little of the incentive.
Well, I don't go into any of that.
You don't really dig into any of those issues. Mostly, you're really dealing with sort of the interpersonal and the issues around the handicaps themselves. So where do you see, you mentioned that this is going to be a series. So tell us a little bit about where you kind of see the series going.
Thanks. It's called Uniquely Us, Tales from a Resource Room, and the first book is called The Test. The second book will be called, hopefully, The Science Fair Project, and the third one is The Conference. They're novellas, and so very easy to read, very quick, different than the novel. With Uniquely Stella is clearly a novel. These are lighthearted, easy to read, you're going to laugh. And if you just want a good laugh and go, oh, I've been there, I get this.
Do we get any laboratories blowing up?
No, not in this one. This maybe in the Science Fair Project. Don't know. But if you tell me any stories, maybe I'll put it in.
I may have a few childhood things that I've never told anybody.
I'll write them in.
Well, so is there anything else about your books and your characters and kind of what makes you as a writer unique, or tell us what you're looking forward to this year about being part of Author Event Network?
Well, a little bit of both. First of all, the characters. For me, they're based on real people. Being an actress in my old days, my younger days, I should say, I like to...
Sounds like there's some stories there.
Oh, yeah. I like to watch people, and then I used to like to imitate them. And so now I kind of watch and look, and then I write about them. And so I take a combination of personalities and mesh them into characters. And so... you know, I'm not really making fun. I'm more kind of just playing with words and playing with a caricature. And it makes it funny that way. I think they're funny anyway. I don't know. You know, I keep trying to tell the person that I'm writing about, this really isn't you. It really isn't.
It really isn't you. It really isn't you.
And then I'm thinking in my head, yes, it is. Yes, it is. Yes, it is.
But it sounds like what happened. No, it was really something different.
Yeah, it was a different person.
They were wearing a blue shirt.
Yeah.
Well, now, have you found that some of the people have recognized themselves in your books then?
Oh, yeah, like my sister. What's this? This isn't me. No, it's not. It's another character.
Her name is Jen, and you're Jan. I think I've had a few of that. I actually named one character after my wife one time, and halfway through the draft, I thought, I better check with her on this.
All the names are changed in all my books, all the names. Yeah. Except for Stella, which is my mother, and Donna, my sister, because that book is for them.
Okay.
And I wrote it about them, for them, even though it's fiction. You know.
Now, have either one of them been able to read it?
No. My mother got to see, when it was first released, I took the book to her, and she looked at it, and she had dementia at that time. She passed away at 94, a few years ago. And I took it to her, and I read the first chapter, and she's going, and I thought, oh my goodness, she hates this. And I said, oh, Mom, I'm sorry, do you like it? She goes, that's me. And I said, yes. And she goes, how do you know about me? And then I just went, yeah, I do, your stories, it is you. You know?
Kids watch.
Yeah. But she, at that time, wasn't able to read it. I would read her chapters, though.
Oh, that's sweet. That's sweet.
Yeah.
Well, I'm looking forward to, so tell us a little bit more. We got one last question. Tell us a little bit about what you're looking forward to as being part of AEN.
Oh, that's right.
And what you're excited about with selling at events and what you might be a little nervous about.
I can't wait. I just think this is so thrilling. I love to talk to people about my books, about special education. And in fact, I want to bring this up. My sister and brother-in-law are starting a podcast that I will host called Resource Remedies. And it's about bringing excitement and fun back to special education. And so we're working on that, and that'll be coming out in a few months' time. The Author Event Network, I love to sit there and meet people. To me, that's the way to do it. And then I look for characters as well. Like people come up, I kind of watch them, and then I describe characters in my book of somebody I've seen come up and I've talked to. And I hear stories all the time. They tell me stories about, one of the chapters in this book is a story that I met a person that I didn't know telling me about something that happened in their classroom one time. It's in the book, you know.
Well, I think those real stories are what makes books most interesting. As I said, I love to really bake in a lot of truisms and facts and real history and real things into my books, and I love that. And I love it when authors do that as well, and because I think you can always tell the difference between something that's coming from someplace emotional and real and authentic than just our imagination. And it's great imagination. Some of the best books in the world have been built purely on imagination. But when you really strip them down, the author will always say, no, there was something real behind that completely imaginary experience. And I think that's what readers are trying to connect to. They're trying to connect to that sense of real.
And that's what's so nice about the Author Event Network, is we can tell each other stories. Because sometimes one person will come up, and especially when you're a teacher, like I was a teacher, and they might be teachers, and we can talk about those common situations we went through. And that's always fun. You know, I enjoy that.
I do, and you know, I think as a teacher of special ed, I think you're gonna meet other people at the fairs and festivals. You're gonna have an immediate connection with them. I think that's going to be great, and we're always looking for people. I mean, we're always, you know, people want to read fiction. They want to read nonfiction. Readers will always come to the booth looking for various genres.
That's right.
And having something that can kind of bridge that gap between, I think, even some of the adolescent and the adult experiences around these issues is going to be very important.
Yes, I think so.
So I still want to know a little bit more about the new book, because I know that I know what it takes to plan a whole series of books. You've got a lot of ideas in your head, and there's too many of them to come out in one book. Tell us more about Uniquely Us, and what are some of the things that the themes, and what are some of the things we're going to learn, that the experiences that the reader will come away with.
Thank you for asking. This started very strangely. 25 years ago, when I was giving this WASL test, the Washington Assessment of Student Learning, I was so frustrated with it that I went and just started writing about it, and just some of the funny things that the kids asked me questions about the test. And I used to do that a lot through the school year. I would take little things kids said, I'd put it in an envelope, put it in my desk drawer, and later bring it out and just read it and be amused by it. My sister actually found the story, and after I had retired, and said, look at this, look what I found. And I said, I thought I threw that away. And she goes, this is really funny. And so I said, okay. And I thought, why don't I try to write this into a book, as other people were saying that I should? So I did. And then I started you know, making things up to go with it as well. And it really is from my experiences working at Gordon Elementary School in Kingston. Now, for any teachers that are still there that I worked with, they're not in this book. I made those characters up, you know, but yeah, sort of. The things that the kids said are real, though. But the children in the book are composites of kids I had. One student is exactly like what he was, but he was actually at another time, at another school. All the names are changed, so no parents are going to go, that's my kid. And no teacher's going to go, I think that's me, except for one.
That's the official story, and we're sticking with it.
That's right, and that's the way it is. Where's the disclaimer at the bottom of the book? Yes. And so they really are my experiences that I had. Now, I didn't only work at at Gordon Elementary. I retired from Philida Elementary in Vancouver, Washington. That's where I retired. I left Kingston, Gordon, I'm sorry. I left Gordon Elementary, I think it was in 2005. And then I moved down to Portland so I could take care of my mother and my sister. And
now, do you have a lot of authors, and I oftentimes ask this question, have a process. Some say, well, I got to get up first thing in the morning, and before I do anything, I've got to write for 2 hours. Or some people say, I write when I'm inspired, or some people have different. Now, do you have a particular process that you go through in terms of writing? Do you plan your books out? Do you write a certain time of day? How does that work for you?
You know, maybe I should, but I don't. Sometimes it will be the strangest times, and it's usually when I'm worried, upset, or nervous about something. Like maybe I'll go back and write something now in my car. You know, who knows? My best chapter that I feel to myself that I ever wrote. We were driving on the way to Spaghetti Factory, and I wrote a chapter in the car. It just hit me. I don't know how. And sometimes and I couldn't stop. I just had to keep going. I'm in the parking lot. Wait, just go ahead. I just need to finish this. And I finished it just like that.
Interesting.
Sometimes it just hits me, and then I just start writing. And if I had to say 9 to 10, I'm going to do it, I don't think I could do that.
Yeah. Okay.
It just kind of comes when it comes.
Well, that I hear you in that sometimes you're more inspired than others. I tend to be a late nighter. So it's when all of the businessy stuff is done.
Right.
All of the emails are stopped coming in. There's no more phone calls, no more meetings, no more podcasts or anything else. Everybody's in bed. The house is quiet, and it's just me and this story world, and we can go wherever we want.
It's kind of like everybody has a different way, and that's okay. It doesn't matter. It's okay.
Well, if you were to ask yourself as a writer, what are your goals and ambitions then? Where does it that once, in addition to kind of, finishing out this series, which is we've always got to have sort of a goal. Do you have any other goals and ambitions as a writer?
Maybe I do. And I think it has to do with when I see so many people leave special education. It's a hard job. So many people are just, deserting it. And I want new teachers to know it doesn't have to be horrible. It doesn't have to take up your whole life and be filled with paperwork and anguish. It can be fun. It can be exciting, and it can be funny. And that's okay. And that's what I want new teachers to know. I'd love to be able to mentor, and maybe in the podcast I'll be able to do that, new special ed teachers or those that are in the field now thinking they want to leave, and say, let's try this again.
So your new podcast will be targeted towards teachers in the teaching community, special education.
Resource remedies.
Have you thought about also using the book to do speeches or seminars?
I would love to do that.
Okay.
Anybody want to ask me? Anybody want to hire me? I would love to talk to people. Yes.
Excellent. Excellent. Well, Deborah, thank you so much for your time today. We're so excited to have you part of Author Event Network.
So am I.
Thank you for coming to Meet the Author. We have a number of great authors. We're going to be at dozens of events all over the Seattle and Portland area this summer. Look us up online. We're on Facebook. We're at authoreventnetwork.com. Thank you for coming, and keep reading.
Thanks.